Hey, it's Ray. Welcome back or welcome to Film Radar. I absolutely love horror films. Always have, always will. And I recap our favorites weekly right here. Today we'll discuss Kate Shortland's 2017 thriller mystery, Berlin Syndrome, where Claire, an Australian tourist traveling to Berlin, finds herself in a rather terrifying and disturbing situation after a one-night stand with this guy, Andy. She agrees to spend more time with him, claiming she wants to escape a boring life and experience something real. Is this what she's looking for, or will this experience be too much for Claire to handle? I'll tell you. Claire is an Australian tourist and photographer excited to see what the world has to offer her. She's quite adventurous in her trek around the city as she hangs out with some randoms her first night. The next day, as she gets dressed where she is staying, another woman dresses alongside her. You can see in her face she is somewhat uncomfortable, but she continues her day. She does some shopping, purchasing some clothes and little pictures of the city. She's hanging out at the library when she sees a man in a yellow coat leaving. She leaves as well and meets Andy, the nice guy English teacher, and they hit it off, the two having a cute meetup when he drops one of his books, and she kindly picks it up. Ah, sneaky guy. He asks her why she is here alone and offers her some of his strawberries. She takes one and says she wants to do a book on architecture, hence the photographs. They have an awkward pause, but shake hands, kiss on the cheek, and formally introduce themselves. They go to their first set of abandoned homes in this movie and continue their walk and talk. When Claire asks about it being empty, Andy says it's forbidden for anyone to live there. Claire's mom calls her and she ignores the call, mentioning she is kind of obsessed. Andy inquires if Claire's mom knows she is here, and she pauses and chuckles, but says yes. Andy says his mom used to bring him here. It's a place he now frequents, and then he confuses the word complicate for contemplate, Claire laughing at his cute mistake and correcting him. She continues walking and almost passes a red gate when a big dog comes out of nowhere barking and charging towards it. She gets spooked, jumping, and Andy comes to comfort. This is about his 7th red flag, as he mentions he just comes here all the time and neglects to tell her about the dog anyways. Claire tells Andy that she was doing photos for a real estate company back in Australia and is here for a real life experience. Andy says she is brave. Night falls and Andy drives Claire back to where she is staying, inviting him up to the rooftop she was at the previous night. He rejects as he says he has to meet someone. She says it's fine anyways because she has to pack for dressed in the next morning. He out of nowhere slowly tugs on some of her hair, asking why, caressing her face as she just sits there breathing heavily. He stops and turns on his car as he says his goodbyes. Claire does as well, clearly frustrated of what's happened. Looking through her camera photos from the day while she's lying in bed, she sees Andy in a couple of them, and thus seems to have been around her basically all day before they even met. But Claire doesn't take any of this as a red flag. She heads out in search of him the next day, finding him at the same library. As she approaches him from behind, she sees he is looking at the same book she was flipping through. They slowly grab hands and he challenges, "I thought you were leaving." It cuts to them at the bar. Andy saying she photographs disappointment and teaches her the German word for choke. A very normal lunch date if you ask me. While his hand is on her neck, he spots the necklace she wears. Claire says her mother gave it to her, saying if she were ever in any trouble, she could always come right home. Back in Andy's car, it is nighttime again, and they head to an even more deserted area than last time, well away from where Claire, or really anyone, is staying. Claire continues this pattern of not seeing the red flags, or maybe she does, but is ignoring them in hopes that Andy is everything he appears to be. They enter the graffiti-marked building. Walls and everything looks very old. There is no one else around as they head deeper and into the main corridor. Andy says Berlin is full of these empty places as they enter yet another door and up some stairs to what is seemingly his apartment. Claire walks in slowly, and there's random lamps, a light in the small kitchen, some books, and a mattress on the floor. I know some people live like this, but here it's definitely a red flag. Looking just a tad hesitant, Claire looks out of the window. When trying to open it, maybe for some fresh air, or maybe because she's realized she's in a strange place with a strange man, it does not open. Andy chiming in that the windows do not open. Oh boy. Andy comes up like, "Should I make dinner?" And Claire's like, "Nope," and then they have sex. It's really slow and drawn out, and there's super creepy music playing in the background. Andy goes downtown. down. And Claire tries to cover her mouth so no one will hear her screams. However, Andy moves her hand, informing her that she's fine to yell because no one will hear her. Another good sign. As they lay together, Andy says he wishes they could stay like this, that he doesn't want this to end, but not really in that sweet way. Claire is like, everything ends, but Andy doesn't want to know her. In German, he continues, that's when you see their ugliness. We cut to the bell ringing at school, Andy's work. His class going over a story that no doubt reflects what's going on here. One of the students, Franca, says the main character of their story is, quote, just escaping, which can be said about both of these two. Claire is dressed and headed out, but realizes the door takes a key and is unable to find it. Shuffling through some things, she sees a school photo with all the administration, including Andy, along with a couple of notebooks from the kids on the kitchen table. With the windows locked and no one around, Claire is forced to wait there until Andy eventually gets back to the apartment. As he leaves the school, a couple of his coworkers ask him to go out with them. He says he can't because he has a date. Same thing he said last week. Andy does luckily go back to the apartment, and Claire asks if he left her a key and that she tried to leave and realized she couldn't. He says he thought he left a key for her on the dresser, but that she is free to leave now, in a calm tone as he unpacks his day, heading towards the shower. He is dismissive towards her, so she challenges, did he lock her in? He answers her question with a smug look, shirt off, heading towards her, saying, yeah, sure, and that next time he will tie her to the bed. The lust takes over, and they have sex again and go out to a nightclub, ending their night back at his apartment. Andy kisses Claire goodbye the next morning, and she quickly stirs and asks about the key. He says it will be on the dresser, looking right at it. He gives her a long, lingering kiss on the head before he leaves, clearly thinking heavily about something. Just as fast as Claire's clothes came off, something bad is about to happen in this apartment. She chills around the place, eats fruit, and finds a book in the kitchen, realizing it's the one she first looked at before she even met Andy. She flips through it and inside finds a blurry photograph of herself, eyes closed, laying in bed, and the word mine written in black ink on her shoulder. She also realizes her necklace is gone and slowly pauses before pondering if she should freak out. She should. After checking her shoulder in the mirror, you betcha, mine, it says. She immediately tries the key Andy left on the dresser, and it doesn't work on the front door. She tries the windows, obviously, but we already know about those. Claire eventually charges her phone to find there is no longer a SIM card in it as well. Looking down the hallway at the front door to her freedom, it slowly dawns on her she will not be leaving this apartment by her own free will anytime soon. Chairs can't even fully break the windows. They were reinforced. Andy gets home and acts like her breaking the windows is a slight inconvenience he will have to buy more supplies to fix, not something she broke trying to escape. He accepted before he left the apartment that he'd come back to an enlightened Claire and had his plan in motion to keep her there with him. But why? He ends up more than downplaying the whole thing and actually blames her for her own confusion here, saying she is the one who decided to stay and not go to Dresden. Claire starts crying and tries to explain to Andy it was just a fun thing, not that she wants to stay here with him, but there is no reasoning with him. She can't even convince him to go out to dinner when he ignores her request for her necklace. She finally flips her lid and tries to hit him and scream to open the door. We are reminded, as well as Claire, that no one can hear her. Andy goes to class the next day, where there are other teachers learning from a professor. Sitting in the back of the room, he flips through the photographs he took of Claire that he keeps in his bag. The teacher of the class calls him son. That night, they have dinner, and Andy tells his father that he has met someone. His father, named Eric, after noticing Andy was late for class, asks about a woman named Natalie, and Andy informs him she went back to Canada with a sad tone. Andy says his new lady is Australian. When his dad asks why he always chooses tourists, Andy clarifies Claire is not a tourist. She lives here now. The scene being interjected with cuts back to Andy's apartment, where he is beating up Claire, dragging her across the floor to the bedroom where he tied her up as he promised. Andy comes home with gifts for Claire, telling her in a sweet tone he told his father about them, and texted her mother from her phone for her, telling her that she is okay. okay? Claire responds, throwing her gifted puzzle on the floor, and says that she is not okay. She goes in the shower. Threats that her mom will eventually work out that something is wrong fall on deaf ears as she finds more disturbing contents. Long dark hair in the drain. She is tied up each night, it seems, and left to her own demise during the day, as she tells him there is nowhere for her to go. She listens to him leave as he puts the real key to the front door in a black metal box. Taking note of Andy's routine, Claire continues to the kitchen for some more sleuthing. She finds an old screwdriver under the couch as well. Andy comes home and finds Claire in a better mood, surprisingly. She pleasantly greets him, working on the puzzle he bought her. As he sits next to her to help, he is distracted. She takes the screwdriver from underneath her leg and jams it in his hand. As she stumbles to the front door, she can barely get it open, struggling to keep her wits and stay on her feet. The door finally opens and she bursts out, sprinting down the stairs for her life. Andy, groaning in pain, eventually gets the screwdriver out of his hand, free from the table, and rushes after her. He catches up with her in the corridor and jams her hand in one of the doors, breaking it. She almost screams out, but the pain is unbearable, and he breaks her fingers even more, wrapping his hand around hers tighter, causing her to pass out. Later, we see Andy and Eric catching up again. We learn Andy has mommy issues because she left them at one point. He says this in response to his father when he tells Andy that his mom wants to see him. His father mentions the stitches on Andy's hand, and he says he's got them renovating. They have an awkward moment as his dad clearly can tell something is wrong, Andy asking if they can just keep playing their game. At home, Claire tries to tell Andy she misses her mom. He says she shouldn't, as he just takes some photographs of her and takes them into some secret room. She is trying to calmly speak to him, still telling him he doesn't have to do this, but he replies dryly, "I just want to do this," and goes into that secret room with one of her photos. Claire looks on disturbed. The next day at school, Andy looks at the underage girls, mainly Franca. That night, Andy washes Claire in the shower and then gets a knock at the door. It's Franca, and she sees Claire and asks who she is. Andy, ignoring her question, asks what she wants. She says that he was looking at her earlier, and he says yes, just as plain and cool as he is when he is tying Claire to the bed or breaking her hand or giving her a shower. He blames Franca, saying she made a spectacle of herself. That night, during one of their photo shoots, Andy slaps Claire after she calls him abnormal. She finds some old jewelry and an old painted nail under the bed that night. Andy, somewhat disturbed, goes to his father's. Back at the apartment, the lights and electricity cut out as the first snow falls around the abandoned building. At Eric's, Andy awakes and goes downstairs to find his dad has passed away on the couch. When trying to call him, getting no response, and notices he is blank stared, completely silent, not moving. Claire finds old nail polish that matches the color of the nail and puts it on. Also donning some lingerie that Andy bought for her, she takes pictures in the polish and lingerie. Back at Eric's, Andy goes downstairs to the basement and starts punching a heavy bag. He also calls someone named Steven to tell him his father has passed a few days ago. Claire finds a souvenir pen in Andy's bookcase from somewhere in Calgary, which is a town in Canada, this being more evidence that the woman before Claire in this situation, the dark hair from the drain and who Eric had asked about, is all Natalie. Andy plays the accordion for his father as he waits for paramedics to come get him. They arrive and he finally goes back to the apartment. He tells Claire about his father passing and cries for the first time about it in her arms. Then they have sex. I am getting the feeling Claire is playing her card here, getting close to him and staying chill for now. They celebrate Christmas together. She is in the outfit she bought long ago at this point. He surprises her with her dad's dog, Lottie. The next day, Andy takes Claire outside finally. They go to the woods. Claire smiles as she explores and breathes fresh air for the first time in a while. Andy following closely behind her, staring intently as he bends down, slowly grabbing an axe and appearing like he's about to bash Claire's head in. It's then something stops him. A young boy yelling in pain after he hurt his leg. His brother jogging up to Andy asking for help. Andy, aggravated at the interruption, agrees to help and asks if the boys are alone, to which they say yes. Claire sees he is distracted and crouches down to the little boy and begs him to tell an adult that Andy is a bad man who will hurt them. These are the first people she's spoken to that aren't Andy in a long, long time. The kid only speaks German though and doesn't understand and yells loudly at her to get off. Andy notices, this causing an awkward pause as it looks like for a second like he's about to just get rid of all three of them. The boy's mother showing up out of nowhere though, thanking Andy for making sure they were okay.
Yeah, no problem, lady.
He shakes his head no to Claire, signaling to her to keep quiet. He grabs Claire by the hand, indicating shit will get wild around these parts if she doesn't hush and keep walking. He casually asks her, axe in hand, the other on her shoulders, how she thinks this is going on a scale of 1 to 10. They arrive at the car, him opening the trunk, and with a defeated, blank look, she turns to him and replies, maybe a 7, before getting in the trunk. The next day, Andy gets rid of Lottie the dog and says she ran away. He goes to his coworker's New Year's Eve party and tunes a lot of it out, drifting into that place he goes to when he's with people. Claire breaks into Andy's secret room where she finds and goes through more photographs, some of his old houses and an old woman in a hospital bed that are on a camera, and then photographs in an actual photo album full of physical copies of explicit pictures. It's getting extra real for Clara because she's realizing that Andy's done this to several women before her and will continue to do it if he gets the chance. Back at the party, Andy finds himself once again disgusted when this woman from his job touches his arm in passing as she is helping him clean up. He asks if Peter, his other coworker, and I guess this lady's husband or something, minds her acting like this. Her obviously confused at the question is like, what are you talking about? To which he says she is throwing herself at him. She looks at him with disgust, saying he should leave.
Happy New Year, I guess.
Claire sees the fireworks from the apartment and stares longingly as she starts crying, especially because Andy is seemingly out looking for some fresh meat, picking up a woman's scarf that fell and asking her what her New Year's resolution is, flirting similarly to when it was he and Claire. Andy says resolutions are good to compensate your life. When the woman chuckles and corrects him, it's contemplate your life. Here he is using the same grammatical ruse he used on Claire, on this woman, just one of the many games and tricks he played to reel Claire in. She is luckily called away by her friend and Andy leaves. He drives slowly through the celebratory streets of Berlin, looking over several brunette white women. The one back home is trying to break out. She actually spots someone outside and starts yelling for her life. When she sees the person's flashlight coming closer, she grabs a pan to break the window. She breaks the window again and keeps yelling, seemingly actually managing to get the person's attention. He follows her screams and actually sees her. She clamors, getting some shoes on and running to the front door to scream. As she looks through the peephole, she sees Andy behind the guy all of a sudden, who then bashes the stranger in his head repeatedly. He opens the door to a crying Claire, distraught and saying she's sorry as she feels it was her fault. It is so sad she has come so close to escaping and is yet so far with Andy in her way. He gets rid of the man's body and cleans up the mess while Claire cannot do anything but sing a slow, sad version of the song Downtown by Petula Clark. Interesting song choice as it's about loneliness and seeking a place of calm and peace when you're down and alone, not knowing where to go.
Kind of like these two.
Andy sees a missing person post for Claire in the paper that night, and then he tells her to pack her shit, let's bounce. She's kind of like, what? But she's kind of like, okay, but not really, because this fool's obviously planning to kill her, you know? Her face is now in the paper. She's already almost escaped. She keeps eating all his fruit. So she does some smart final girl shit and goes to the stove after she sees Andy grading one of his students' papers. The student being Miss Franca. Claire purposely burns her whole hand on the stove so he could be distracted and go get the lotion or ointment or whatever. He gets all of Claire's stuff together right in front of her and takes it down to the basement of the building as if she won't be needing it anymore. He also shuts off the water and electric. Claire just lets him do it because she's got a plan. At school, Franca finds the picture of herself that Claire left in her notebook for her to find. She is so aghast though that she freaking drops the freaking picture as she's running out the room to go snitch. God damn it. Her classmate picks it up and gets all whispery when Andy asks what's going on. Another student, Martina, gives Andy the photo, and Andy says fuck them kids and rushes out the school. Stuck in traffic, he ditches his car to get to the apartment on foot. As he gets there, he sees the window that didn't opened, and his metal box on the ground outside. Zero sign of the girls. But then he hears footsteps coming from upstairs and knows they're still in the building. We see one of them hiding, being as quiet as they can. Andy then breaks into the next room, quietly heads towards the kitchen where Franca is hiding. Claire then calls him downstairs, saying she is there so he doesn't find Franca. She is hiding stealthily, but can't go anywhere. As he stalks around the room slowly, calling for Claire, he eventually comes across his photo album on the floor, taking just a second to look through it before moving on to look for her. It's then we hear Claire call Andy's name softly once more, and he follows her voice. Rounding the corner, Andy sees Claire in the apartment doorway. She gives him one last look in the eyes before closing the door and locking it from the outside, just as he had done to her so many times previously. Franca came through. I think she was our unsung hero here. Claire was the brains, but without Franca, she wouldn't have had the outside help she needed to escape. This whole film, Andy couldn't decide if he wanted to live in that quiet place in his head that he'd always escaped to, or live with the people around him that loved and actually cared for him. In the end, Claire chose for him. I think she was a bit tougher than she looked, honestly. She gave wolf in sheep's clothing for sure. You go, girl. With light on her face finally and her necklace back on, she is on the other side of the door now, and she is free. Okay guys, that will do it for this video here on Film Radar. I do hope you enjoyed. If you did, please give it a thumbs up, and if you haven't yet, don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss an upload. Bye!